While the world around us is changing and we're having to reimagine and reconfigure everything we do, there are some things that remain exactly the same. The jobs we do and the jobs we do next, and the way we move from one to the other. Careers are just as important as ever, and it all starts with self-awareness. How do we boost our career by knowing ourselves better? How do you improve and share your verbal cover letters, your 60-second career story that turns that self-awareness into something that develops and progresses? And that is what we're talking about right here. Welcome to the Go Beyond Disruption podcast. I'm Kyle Hannon. I'm based out of the UK office of AICPA and SEMA. The office based in the heart of the financial district in the City of London. Except, like most of us, the office is something I talk about rather than a place I go to, because this is recorded in the midst of pandemic lockdown, mid-June 2020. This episode, we are talking to career coach Arun Coumar. He's a managing director, a strategic planning consultant, and the founder of findprofessionalsuccess.com. I also have to mention that he is an author. He is focused on careers in a way that perhaps many people today need to discover for themselves. That is what we're talking about with Arun Coumar. He works with high-performing career starters, people who are well into the first stage of their professional services careers, but they might be feeling that perhaps things aren't going the way they planned. Perhaps the job had a lot of initial promise, but things have kind of faded. So what Arun does is he gets them started on a more driven path and keeps them focused on progress using what he calls the 4 pillars. And that is something that you can focus on too. And that is your backstory that converts into your future narrative. Arun, where are you based at the moment? Where are you joining us from?
Well, I'm also here in London.
You've done some traveling in the last couple of years. But what do you do now that connects with the profession?
Sure. So up until 3 weeks ago, I worked for PwC in a deals consulting practice that focused on financial reporting and complex accounting. And I was a CPA back in the US, where I moved from to London last September. And I was with PwC for 3 years. I was started in 2017, but created my career coaching program in the beginning of 2018. I saw that a lot of my colleagues were frustrated with their first jobs, and I had seen when I was in college a lot of my classmates struggling to find direction and pick a specific career path. So back in 2018, I created my career coaching program called Professional Success, which is where the whole brand around my career coaching business comes from.
Got you. So just to make it very clear, this applies to people no matter what company they work for. And while you were talking about your time at PwC, you're not saying anything that says, hey, there's anything about that company which made people dissatisfied. This can apply to anyone in almost any job. It doesn't even have to be within the finance and accounting profession, does it?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I've worked with people who are nurses and graphic designers. I do like to focus on professional services, but this program can definitely apply to a broader range of industries.
So what sparked the move into career coaching work? How did that all happen? Was there a particular conversation you had, someone that told you something which made you see new potential? Where did you move from employee to coach?
Well, I think it all starts actually with the fact that both of my parents have been in the same jobs for 30 plus years. And I got to watch my dad especially move out of his role as the director of a mental health clinic into private practice and watch his professional life improve dramatically while staying in the same field. And when I went to university, I immediately struggled with trying to find my own direction as I was striving for the same level of career satisfaction that I've seen both of them achieve. And so it really started in college for me, where I was working with my classmates as well as myself initially to really discover what it was that was going to be my dream career and how I was going to thrive in the professional world. And as I went through my own process of interviewing and researching and networking, I began to develop a lot of skills that I was then able to pass on to students who were coming in behind me. So it really started probably my third year of college, where I was working with students in my business fraternity, and I gave them a task, which I called "Tell Me Your Dream Job and I'll Help You Get It." That involved me doing a lot of teaching around how to use LinkedIn and how to figure out what your dream job really is, to do research and make connections with people who could help you learn about yourself as well as progress your career really far, even while you were still in school.
And I have to ask this question. When you talk about the university students of today, what they're learning, the aspirations and ambitions they have, do you think there's a big change, a big difference between today's students and ones of, say, 10, 20 years ago, the ones who are already in middle or upper management now? Do you think the ones coming through the universities now are different, with different ambitions?
I would say that the impression that a lot of upper management gets today is that millennials are not committed to their jobs. They're bouncing around between a lot of different industries and a lot of different types of roles, and there's not as much company loyalty as there used to be. And I would say that that's true to an extent. I think that people have quite a luxury today to pick and choose a job that really suits them well, whether it be company culture or the type of work. There's just a lot of freedom available to people to change jobs without a huge risk involved.
And at the moment, that huge risk may have changed the landscape considerably, because there is more risk these days with careers, with jobs, with employment and prospects being disrupted by the pandemic. Of course, at some stage, we're going to look back on this all and things will recalibrate and we'll hit a new stride. But for the moment, this kind of stuff is really important. And there's certainly risk, but that's why making the right move for the right reasons is even more important. And you've written a book, which some of my colleagues have seen. In fact, that's one of the reasons they recommended you for this podcast. What is that book about? Why'd you write it?
Well, I'll start by saying I wrote it because I wanted to create something that I thought would be helpful to people on a much broader level than what I can do with one-on-one coaching. I'd been doing one-on-one coaching as a, side offering to my day job, so I'd frequently not have any clients, but wanted to write this book so that I could hopefully touch a wider audience and help people beyond my more expensive initial offering. So the book is two parts. The first part talks about the definition of professional success. So this is a synonym that I've made for your dream career. It's not just about a dream job anymore. It's about how you can progress throughout your career and adapt your job that you have with yourself and your own priorities in your life to really make your career the most impactful and satisfying to you that it can be. And the second part is a 8-step blueprint that I created that really walks you through the process of first transforming your mindset and adopting a practice of self-awareness, as we're going to talk about more, and then taking action to build your network, build the skills that you need, and make a career transition into something that really satisfies you.
And what's the book called?
It's called Professional Success, a Career Building Blueprint.
Okay, so we'll talk a bit more about that soon. But of course, you wrote that book before the situation we're in. The pandemic has changed almost everything around us. But as I said in the introduction, a lot remains the same. We all want to have careers which offer us the right balance of professional rewards, future prospects, personal development. Of course, we have to balance a lot these days. What's your take on it? I mean, how do we balance progression, passion, and excitement in our careers?
That's a great question. So I'd start with saying that you mentioned at the beginning my 4 pillars of professional success.
Yeah.
This is where I think it would be great to talk about those. There are 4 pillars. They are that every job in your career will have 4 characteristics. First one is that you're interested in the work that you're doing. The second one is that you are highly skilled in the work that you're doing. The third is that you care about the impact of your work. And the fourth is that your work earns you a life that you want. I think the one that's most important to address in this question is the third one, which is you care about the impact of your work. Impact can take a couple of different meanings. It's both the impact it has on your career as well as the impact that it has on the world. And at certain points in your life, you may find that you care more about one than the other, and I'd say that's perfectly okay. Every job is created to develop and build some value in the world. So for whatever job you have, you are going to be creating value for the world. Certain jobs you may want to take because it's going to be really helpful for your own career progression, and others you may want to take because you really value the mission and vision of the company that you're working for. So I'd say it's okay to sway on that balance, but it's a question of fitting all four of those pillars together to the extent you can to really make sure that you're striking the balance of that particular pillar in the best way that you can.
And does everyone have the same four pillars?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so is it the balance, the way that each of those four components balance out against each other? How do we determine what the mix, the balance would be?
Sure. So I do ask a series of questions of my clients, and I lay them out in the book as well, that really help you to define each of those four pillars of professional success for yourself. And so in defining each of those pillars for yourself, you can assign a certain value to them that can help you create the balance. For example, in my own career, my first job was very well suited for my definition of professional success at the time. I was interested in the work. I was doing a lot of IPOs and mergers and acquisitions, and that was really exciting to me. I was good at the work. I'd, done well in my accounting classes in school. I cared about the impact of my work insofar as it was really good for my career progression. I knew it would be a very challenging role in which I could learn quite a lot. And then it was earning me the life that I want. I was living in San Francisco, just enjoying myself as a new graduate, and wasn't thinking too much more about long-term progression than that. So at the time, it was a perfect fit for me.
Okay, so everyone has the same four pillars, but balanced differently. We all have our own formula, which is encouraging. We all like a formula, but the way that we apply it is crucial. And this is even more important in the situation that we face right now, right across the world. The current situation has changed so much. It's changed the way we look at the jobs we're doing at the moment. It's also likely to be changing the way we plan for the next job we're going to be doing, for our next career move. What is changing right now, Arun? What do people have to do now that perhaps they wouldn't have had to do a few months ago when it comes to finding that balance between the four pillars and deciding how that's going to create a sense of what they really bring to their next employer?
Well, I would say that one of the things that I really encourage my clients to do is research. And research can come in a number of different forms. And nowadays, with everyone working from home in pandemic times, we are becoming more accustomed to the idea of remote work. And so one of those ways in which you can conduct some research is by doing a one-off project for a company in an industry that really interests you, or take on a consulting project, or rather than meeting for coffee with somebody, you are just getting on the phone with them. And I'd say that is really opening up our menu of options that are available to do research now that remote working and video calling are much more mainstream. I'd say more people are available to speak with, and work isn't necessarily as location dependent as it was before. So in coming up with your own formula and your definition of professional success, you have a lot more options for conducting research than you did before.
And possibly the opportunity at the time to do it, because if we're not going to be commuting for 2 hours every day, some people obviously commute for much less, others much more, we can be doing something else with that time. Research is good, as you say, possibly reaching out to other teams in your company, getting involved in work which suddenly becomes practically doable because now everything is virtual. So you can dip your expertise into all sorts of different activities across your company. It doesn't just have to be in your office or in the team that you're used to be, sharing water cooler space with. So there's a lot of potential and more time. Going back to something you said when we first met, and this got me thinking, you deal with people in the early stages of their careers, right? For the most part.
Yeah.
Right. I think there's a sense that people shouldn't be taking any chances. I don't know if this is universal, but I can't imagine that there is anyone who feels absolutely secure in their roles right now. So much is changing. And I don't think that people feel that they can afford to take as many chances or risks as they may have done in the past. Is there a danger of being in a position where it seems really hard to make any changes? Because if you're surrounded by uncertainties, you can sometimes feel that you're not able to get going in one direction or another. And you said something really interesting when we first met a while back. You said this, one is never really stuck. What did you mean?
Well, I don't know if I can put it into any more concise words than that, but you're never really stuck is, to me, words of encouragement. I would say that I heard this a lot with people in my profession before, that they're getting themselves stuck in the world of accounting, that they aren't sure if they want to do accounting for their whole lives. They may end up finding that they do, but at that particular time, they're saying, "Oh, I don't know if this is for me, but I don't know what else I could do. I think I'm stuck here now. I've been here, 4 years, and I don't know if I can get a job that isn't in accounting." And my response to that is, you're never really stuck. I would say that while it's true employers value your experience, when you're early in your career, you can really apply your skills and experience in a number of different ways to sell yourself to a future employer. I'd say that every job has some sort of learning curve that employers can appreciate, and that also every door to a job can be pushed open. If you do need to get qualifications, you can go out and get them. And as I mentioned before, now there's so many more means for getting experience and education through online learning, just simply talking to people, getting other project-based work that you can do remotely. So there's really just a lot of options available to us, and it's just a matter of digging to find them.
I suppose if you're going to dig yourself a big tunnel from point A to point B, it can be a bit off-putting when you think of the task ahead, but you've got to start by breaking the soil in the first place, haven't you? So, start small. That gives you a sense that progress is easy if you break it down into smaller steps. I think I heard them say, how do you eat an elephant? One piece at a time. Don't be scared by the size of the task. Just get started with the first small step that you need to take toward it. I suppose that makes sense, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And that's where the 8-step blueprint in my book came from.
What perhaps is the first step we take? Before we go forward, we need to step back, take a look at ourselves to really figure out what we're best at. I know for most people, and you did mention LinkedIn earlier, whenever you look at your next role, we normally start with what's already on our CV or resume, don't we? Or do we need to go back a little further than that before we can plot a different path to our future role?
I'd say absolutely. You need to look further back than just the past work experiences and companies that define you. For example, for me, I would say that my first ever job did influence me quite a lot when I was looking for roles immediately after college and still to this day. And that job was pizza delivery. So for me, in my definition of professional success, my second pillar, which is what am I really good at? For me, I'm very good at thriving in fast-paced, demanding situations where I have to prioritize a number of different tasks and execute them all very quickly. That's something that I really enjoy doing. I'm the type of person that will, write down my big list of ideas or tasks and then put in headphones with intense music and get to work. And I really enjoyed that process as a pizza delivery driver. Working Friday nights was always really challenging, but also lucrative, and that was really fun for me. So as you asked for the first step is define your professional success. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of questions laid out in my book that will help you define your professional success through what you're interested in, what you care about, what you're good at, and what sort of life you want. That's all basically involving a lot of self-reflection and remembering back to your old jobs, not so much for what specific skills did you learn or what responsibilities did you have or what company was it, but it's more just about how you felt in it and what you enjoyed about it. So those are, to me, very, very valuable pieces to the puzzle when you're looking for your next job and defining your professional success.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think we'll carry on with more on those 8 steps in a minute. Before we continue our conversation with Arun, the AICPA's annual Engage event is coming up shortly in about 5 weeks' time toward the end of next month, July 2020. This year, the premier annual event for accounting and finance professionals is 100% virtual, so you can be part of it from wherever you are right now. It'll run from Monday 20th to Friday 24th of July, and you'll be able to join your peers and your colleagues, people who understand the challenges you face and who can help you get a step ahead. Engage 2020's live online sessions feature dynamic speakers on timely topics like how COVID-19 is impacting tax and financial planning, how it's affecting strategies and accounting, audit and tax rules, as well as regulations this year and beyond. You'll unpack the latest on how the recovery policies may be affecting your work and the ways you support your clients. Plus, you can also earn up to 50 CPE or CPD credits. You can interact with exhibitors, you can network with your peers, all 100% online. Engage 2020 has 150 sessions running over 7 tracks, and they're all available at a discount. If you register before the end of this month, June 2020, you'll save $150 at checkout, and you'll see that offer in US dollars from wherever in the world you register. And you can do that at aicpaengage.com. That is aicpaengage.com. Links in our show notes. And we'll see you there. Right, back to our conversation with career coach Arun Coumar. Arun, we were talking about how to step back and audit ourselves to better understand the value that we could bring as employees, the value we bring to our colleagues, the value we bring to our employers, our companies and our clients. So once we've got that sorted out, what do we do with all of this self-awareness? What kind of effort do we have to make so that this value is clearly communicated so that it can really boost our search for that next more satisfying role?
Well, so as you mentioned in the beginning, I encourage all of my clients to create and practice a career story. So it's also known as a verbal cover letter, as I like to call it. And this is really for use in all communications that you have while you're going through this career transition or transformation, as I sometimes refer to it. And it's structured pretty straightforward. It's basically a chronological history of who you are, where you are right now, and where you want to go, and how that particular conversation is going to be valuable to you and what you're hoping to get out of it. So it's really that straightforward, and it helps so much to take control of a conversation and really drive value for both you and hopefully the other person as well.
You mentioned taking control of a conversation. Can you give us an example of that so that we can get a sense of where we can start practicing that right now? Let's put ourselves in a typical conversation that most of us have a couple of times a week. Let's say we've been asked to introduce ourselves to new colleagues or to a more senior team or a project focus group. We're doing that all over video conference calls. What can we do there? Tell us about how we'd craft that verbal cover letter so we can do a more effective job of pitching our value in that kind of situation.
Well, so let's say in this instance that you're talking to the senior leadership of your company and you're pitching the solution to a problem that was identified by your manager. So let's say the senior leadership has an idea of what the problem is, but they don't really know what a solution could be, and they especially don't know who you are. And what you're hoping to get out of this conversation is recognition from senior leadership for your efforts in the work and how that might drive your career progression in your company and help you transition maybe into a new role in a different function or a group. So that's the sort of conversation that I would want my clients to take on. So that would start with, one sentence on yourself in this instance, and you're just giving a background on who you are and what you do for the company right now. But what would be really valuable for this particular conversation is the setup of why and how you approached this problem. So let's say you're in the accounting function, but this was more of a budgeting and financial planning problem. You would talk about, I identified certain costs that we need to cut. And so I worked collaboratively with the finance function to identify what costs need to be taken out. I used certain skills. I worked well with a team. And you're not saying all that explicitly, but it's coming through in what you're talking about. And in this instance, you're not explicitly asking for that recognition that I mentioned, but you're hoping that it comes through just with the agenda that you have in that conversation. So really, what I would say at a high level is just consider what it is you're looking to get out of the conversation, and then look to take control through a brief summary of who you are, why you're there, and what you're doing, basically. And for me, this came through with shaping my own story over the course of 9 interviews in 1 week back when I was in school and recruiting for accounting firms. There's so many to choose from, and I made the astute decision to apply to all of them. And so that helped me really just hone the craft right away and do 9 interviews in 1 week. And that was how I got my first story really nailed down.
My question then is possibly about the use of the word agenda, because we recognize that. But would you say, if people say, well, you have an agenda, that may sound a little less positive than it needs to be. When you say agenda, you're talking about specific intentioned outcomes. That's what you're talking about when you say the word agenda, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. And I would just say that while it's true the word agenda can have a negative connotation, that's usually in the case of your agenda not being true to the value of the conversation, and it's more self-serving. Whereas in this case, while your agenda may be self-serving in a career perspective, it's also company serving from your work product perspective.
Yeah, and you're not doing it to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. What you're doing is you're communicating the things that need to be communicated so the right things get tied together in the right way, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
I'm going back to that 60-second Zoom pitch, though, of course, other video conferencing services are available. It could be a 60-second MS Teams pitch, Google Meet pitch. It could be a Skype pitch. It could be anything. But whatever you use, you have to start with prep, don't you? And it sounds like a lot of work to do between the story and the reflection and the generating of that self-awareness. How much time do you really need to spend in all the prep before you go out and do this?
Well, it really doesn't have to take that long. I would say that self-awareness and coming up with this story really shouldn't be a long, protracted process of scripting and practicing. And at the end of the day, this should all be authentic and it should come from your own gut reaction. When I work with clients, I try to push through those scripted answers very quickly. Sometimes people might feel like they're in an interview with me, even if it's a friendly conversation with a career coach. So in pushing through those, I'm able to get to the root of someone's career motivations very fast. And it's not anything more than just saying, well, come on, is that really what you think? Or something like that. And it just helps get people started a little more talking about what they're really looking for. And this comes through most for me in something that I offer my clients, which is just a 2-hour blueprinting session. So I mentioned the 8 steps. There's a number of them at the beginning that are preparatory steps, but I think we can accomplish them all in 2 hours. And it's just a really fast-paced and fun session of research and really in-depth conversation in which we try to figure out and define someone's professional success and then create them a plan to go out there and act on their career transformation.
Yeah, you can't make things work unless you do some work. I think, was it Mark Twain who once wrote, I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one instead. I think that makes it pretty clear that writing a short précis, a short summary, requires much more mental effort than writing a long one, especially if you want it to be meaningful and authentic, as you said. Take us behind the scenes, because you talk to a lot of people about where they are right now in your consultations, in conversations. They'll talk about where they want to be. Perhaps they had some ideas about how they could get there, and you have other suggestions. What are some of the typical questions that you get asked about in conversations like these?
Well, most recently, it's that, my start to my job or my internship or my job has been postponed or canceled or I've been laid off. And what is the best use of my time today or this coming summer? Or, whatever other gap you have to work with in order to best develop your career. That's the main question that I've been getting for the past few months. On top of that, it's really a lot of questions around how to communicate answers to tricky interview questions. This comes in the form of staging your own career path in such a way that maybe it's a tricky question because you're not comfortable with a career move you've made in the past, or you're not as comfortable with the intentions that you have for that particular job. So just as an example, one question is, why are you leaving your current job so soon? You've only been there for 6 months. And if the answer is, the culture is toxic and it's not something that I was sold on in the past, and I'm really looking to progress my career in a different direction than what I have come to learn my manager's jobs look like in my current job. That's just a simple, honest answer to that question. Or another one is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? That's a, old trick out of the hat. And just, again, can be answered pretty honestly, and in most cases will contain some form of I don't know fully. Everyone's careers can change quite a lot over the course of 5 years, and so while it's a bit of an unfair question, it's still one that is commonly asked these days. And just going back to the first one of how can I spend my time developing my career, I wrote something a couple of months ago that was just listed out really 4 things that I think are very valuable for people to take on when you have additional time to develop your career. And that is learn, build your network, create content, or build your own work experience. And can go into more detail on those if you'd like, or we can...
Sure. My question about building your own work experience, how does one do that?
Well, so again, as I mentioned before, this notion of virtual working is so commonplace now that it opens up the door to so many different companies that you could potentially build your own work experience with. But really what it looks like is free project work in my case. And I've done it for a number of different companies that has helped build my CV or resume to demonstrate different skills and involvement in different industries that I was really looking to build as I progressed through my own career. So for my own example, I've worked with 2 different startups in the automotive aftermarket industry, which is something I'm very passionate about, and have started my own strategic consulting firm focused on the automotive aftermarket.
What is the automotive aftermarket? Because it sounds like it's got something to do with cars.
It does have something to do with cars. It's basically the world of modifying for performance or different looks, aesthetics, your car. So racing or car shows, but basically modifying your own personal car.
It's interesting. So now that you've talked about things that you're doing, what is next for you? What are your own career plans? Have you got another book in you yet?
I do have another book that will hopefully be coming either later this year or early 2021. And it's going to more specifically address the world of public accounting and the different career paths available for people in that industry. As I mentioned before, this idea of being stuck is kind of common, especially early in your career when people may not really understand all the different ways that their job can be applied in different industries, or the different demand that is out there for someone of their experience. And so this book is going to be a big compilation of interviews of people that have exited into so many different career paths. So I'm really excited to be putting that together.
Great. When's that coming out?
I'm projecting early 2021.
All right. Talking about what's ahead, our typical listener likes to keep one step ahead of the curve. So give me a sense of the next disruption we can expect in the area of career development. Do you see any big changes, any big shifts, especially for those in kind of early start career development?
I would say that this is something that applies mostly to people who are moving from early start into the next stage. And it involves the idea of being afraid of job security due to a lack of certain skills, perhaps. I would say that there's going to be a shift from people who are jack of all trades, they're technically skilled, as well as good managers. I think we're going to move away from that sort of well-rounded person and move into a two-part management structure, where we'll have people who are more generalists and have an understanding of the industry and of the a bit of the nuances of individual contributor roles, but it'll be someone who's very well versed in managerial soft skills. I think there's been a big emphasis on those lately, but then by the same hand, there's been a big emphasis on learning technical skills in this continually digitizing world that we live in. There's going to always be a need for people who understand technology and how to use it. And so we're going to have people who are more generalists in managerial positions, but then we're going to have very well compensated and respected specialists in an individual contributor role who spend a lot more time working with technology or their own other technical skills to really advance a company forwards in that way.
You would say there's really 2 stages that most roles can fall into. One, really highly compensated super specialist roles, and the others perhaps more generalist. Is that it in a nutshell?
Yes.
Okay. Let's do some signposting as we wrap up. For anyone who'd like to find out more about this topic in general, perhaps your work in particular, what are some resources you'd recommend?
I've got to first promote my own website and LinkedIn are both great places to go for advice and the regular articles and LinkedIn posts that I do. And so that's my name on LinkedIn, and findprofessionalsuccess.com is my website. Then there are a couple of other people who I wanted to recommend who I've read their work. I think it's really good and handles a lot more of the nuts and bolts of career transformation. I focus, as we've talked about, on the early stage self-awareness and communication, but there's plenty of people who focus a lot on how to build an effective resume, the specific networking tactics that are going to work best, and really just, going as far as negotiating job offers. And those are Austin Belsack, who's at cultivatedculture.com. And then the other one is Byron Clark, who's at careersidekick.com.
So cultivatedculture.com and careersidekick.com. All right, we'll put those links in our show notes. Arun, let's pretend you get to print your own Go Beyond Disruption podcast t-shirt, and you've got room on the front for just one sentence. What should accounting and finance professionals take away from our conversation that will help them go beyond disruption? What would it say on the front of that t-shirt?
It would say, what are you really trying to accomplish? And I'd put really in all caps, because it's all about really digging underneath that first level of societal pressure. Maybe your family's telling you to have a certain job, or your classmates or your peers are really all seeming to be focused in one direction in their career. Think about it for yourself. What are you really looking to accomplish with your career?
Great place to end our conversation. Arun Coumar, career coach, managing director, strategic planning consultant, and founder of findprofessionalsuccess.com. Thank you so much for sitting down and telling us how to use self-awareness to boost our careers. You can find out more about Arun on LinkedIn and on the website, findprofessionalsuccess.com, links in our show notes. And of course, you can find our entire archive of more than 100 previous episodes of this podcast covering disruptive tech, human intelligence, the kind of things that we need to know that help our business, whatever we do, and those insights, those perspectives coming from deep inside the accounting and finance profession. Find them all at gobeyonddisruption.com. Until next time, I'm Kyle Hannon. I'm based out of the UK office of AICPA and SEMA. We'll be back in a week with more insights and perspectives that help you and your profession to go beyond disruption. Till next time, keep listening and keep safe. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beyond Disruption, brought to you by the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants. Learn more about today's topic at aicpa-cima.com/disruption. This podcast is designed to provide illustrative information with respect to the subject matter covered and does not represent an official opinion or position of the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants or any of its subsidiaries or affiliates. It is provided with the understanding that the association, its affiliates, and subsidiaries are not engaged in rendering legal, accounting, or other professional services. If such advice or expert assistance is required, the services of a competent professional person should be sought. The association, its subsidiaries, and affiliates make no representations, warranties, or guarantees as to and assume no responsibility for the content or application of the material contained herein and expressly disclaim all liability for such damages arising out of the use of, reference to, or reliance on such material.